The next episode of The Commercial Break starts now.
Thank you so much, Des, for coming on The Commercial Break.
Hello,
thanks.
Desmond.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is amazing.
This is amazing to have you. I have to say, I imagine that you and your wife don't talk a lot or you wouldn't be here on The Commercial Break. You and your wife haven't reviewed what happened. We had Hannah on a couple of months ago. She was so lovely with us and gracious with her time. And so Desmond is the full name, Desmond Bishop. That is, I think, about as Irish of sounding of a name as it comes. But you are actually born in London, shot over to Queens, and then didn't get back to Ireland until you were 14 years old. Is that right?
Yeah. As I recently joked in my show, born in London, raised in New York, educated in Ireland, then went to China, and now I'm back in the States, which is a lot of traveling for a bishop to do because I had to do it all diagonally.
Yes.
But the London birth, can I just say that my London birth is like an anomaly. My parents were living in London. They waited for me to be born, and then they immediately left. So I am kind of left with this odd British birth that has like nothing to do with my identity.
Okay, but let's dig into this for a second. So why were your parents over in London, like traveling for vacation or something, and your mom went into labor?
No, so my dad was actually an actor and a model before I was born.
This is where you get your good looks from.
Well, he was very. I wish I could bring up a picture of like my dad's headshot. He was exceptionally good looking, like to the point where like people don't know what to do with how good looking he was. Like when you see this headshot that he has, it's like it's disarming how good looking he was. So my dad had gone from my dad was like an actor and model in London. Then he was headhunted by the Ford Modeling Agency, brought over to the States, and that's where he met my mother at that time.
Okay.
But then his career definitely was always more successful in the UK. So around the time that I was born, he had been back. They had been back in London since 1973. I was born in 75. So, but once my mother was pregnant, she actually didn't want to go back to New York. My dad gave in to my mother's mother pushed my dad to get them to move back to New York.
So mother's mother.
They waited for me to be born because you couldn't travel back in those days pregnant after a certain amount of time. And then I was, within 4 weeks, I was back in New York. But I do have a British birth, which as an Irish American, it has hurt my soul for a very long time. Not to offend your British listeners, but it's just an odd thing. On my birth certificate.
Yes, you're an Irish guy born in London, so I'm sure that they've held that against you
behind enemy lines.
That's
as
right.
I always joke about.
Well, I have to ask: when you go to Ireland to do shows? Because I think you actually were in Ireland doing shows when we talked to Hannah last time. Do you get a warm reception from the Irish crowds?
Well, I think it's pretty important to point out that almost my entire comedy career has been an Irish comedy career. You know, I didn't go to Ireland to do shows. I went to Ireland to go to boarding school when I was 14. So, and I got into comedy when I was 21, when I was still in college in Ireland. So almost my entire career has been in Ireland. And even when I left Ireland, most of the time I didn't come back to the States. So the crowds definitely give me a warm reception, but only because they're the only crowds I've really known until very recently.
That's not true.
And I was very lucky. I was very lucky that because I was educated in Ireland, but I have this strong like New York accent. I never lost my New York accent. Irish people, particularly in those early years, perceived me as like an American, but they were shocked by how much I knew and how good I was at doing like Irish accents and stuff like that.
Yes.
If you've ever seen like Tom Cruise Far and Away,
oh my God,
you will know that Irish people expect Americans to be really bad at Irish accents, whereas I could do like every different area of Ireland. So to be honest, I got more than just a warm reception by Irish crowds. I got more than I deserved because actually I wasn't even that funny. I just happened to be more Irish than they were expecting this mouth to produce.
Yes, you got a warm reception because it's kind of like you walked into foreign. It's almost like you're a foreigner in your own land, and they're like, "Oh my God, he really knows a lot about our culture." And look at him, he's doing an RTE show. By the way, to tell my audience one thing right now, I got to say this before it slips away. Breaking China, Des Bishop, Breaking China on YouTube is one of my favorite pandemic shows because I think that's maybe when it was released by RTE out into the wild or something.
No, it was on RTE in 2014.
Yeah, it was on a long time ago.
I released it into the wild myself without permission. Without permission, I might have on YouTube. I think around that time, or I certainly did it again. I mean, it's shocking to me that you've seen it because
I loved it.
I feel like it doesn't have a lot of views, but it was originally an RTE show where I had 1 year I lived in Beijing for 1 year to learn Mandarin, to do stand-up in Mandarin.
What an experience. I know.
How did you do this? How did you learn one of the most difficult languages to learn in the world in just a year, fluently enough to go then stand up? So here's the whole premise of the premise of the show is Des lives with a family, works in China, and then learns Mandarin well enough to go do stand up in front of a crowd and gets laughs nonetheless. How do you learn the language that quick at your advanced age? And I'm saying this from a place of love and respect because I also am your advanced age.
No, but the older you get, the harder it is to learn new language.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, can I just say that if anybody had 1 year of their life to put aside with the sole purpose of learning a language, you would be amazed how fluent almost anybody would get in that language. Years ago, because I learned the Irish language too, which I won't confuse the audience, but while I was learning the Irish language, the guy who was helping me said that one of the most important things you need for language learning is motivation. And what better motivation than knowing that at the end of 1 year, my progress, or not even just at the end of 1 year, but throughout the whole journey of 1 year, people are going to be watching me progress. So, and Ireland's not a big country, but it's still like a lot of people that are going to be watching you. And if you fail, it's pretty embarrassing. So I was highly motivated.
Yes.
And then China is such a great immersion, because actually not a lot of people speak English there. I was living with that family who they didn't really have English speaking in the house. So it's necessity. You very quickly pick up more than you would expect. Also, by the way, I was very rigid with myself. I didn't watch any English language programming for the full year, except for Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad was some Chinese site, like, one of these iQIYI or one of these Chinese websites actually had the official permission to show Breaking Bad. So it was coming up one day after it was coming out in the United States. So the only show I allowed myself to watch in English was Breaking Bad. The rest of the time I watched everything in Mandarin. I completely immersed myself, no English. And I try not to talk to people in English. I only hung out with Chinese people. I was like the total nerd.
You nailed it, by the way. You nailed it. And I gotta say this. Real quick, what is the Irish language? Gaelic? Is that what it would be?
Gaelic is what they say over here. Yeah, Gaelga officially in the Irish language. And then in English, the word for the Irish language is Irish, But for some reason, but in the States, when you say Irish, people think, isn't that just English with an Irish accent?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had, back in 2007, I had learned the Irish language for a TV series for Irish TV, which was also like a successful TV show, but also easy to do in terms of stand-up about the Irish language, because everyone in Ireland actually has to learn it, but they don't succeed, but it's a compulsory subject in school.
Okay.
But that is where I got the idea for the Chinese project.
Okay, so pull back the curtains a little bit on this show that I loved so much. Does do you approach RTE and say, hey, listen, I want to do this special? Is it your idea? Do you bring it to them, or do they bring it to you?
No, so the Irish language idea was my idea.
I mean, the Chinese one.
Yeah, but this is the journey.
Gotcha.
So the Irish language was my idea, did very well on RTE, and then coincidentally, I had a big breakup. I was actually engaged to be married back in those days.
Oh,
and,
scandalous.
Big breakup, and suddenly I had I just had freedom to do whatever I wanted, career-wise. So I had this obsession with China, the Chinese language. It was leading up to the 2008 Beijing Olympics. So I said, hey, why don't we do this, what we just did, but for Chinese? But unfortunately, first of all, they didn't bite straight away. A much bigger budget, and I didn't actually get it off the ground for 5 years. So it took 5 years from the initial pitch to actually flying to Beijing.
That's such a long time. That's such a long time to sit and wait. I get that. That's
a lot had happened.
Yeah,
my dad got sick, and then we were talking right at the beginning about my dad being an actor and a model. So when my dad got sick, I actually wrote a show about my dad called "My Dad Was Nearly James Bond," because one of his claims to fame, which is actually his claim to fame, is a failure. But he did audition for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or certainly like low level consideration. He's not like in the annals of James Bond history, but he definitely had been looked at by the broccoli, the producers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a running gag in our family that my father had a chance.
God.
So
this is so familiar, Des. Let me share with you. And this is
this another strange cross of our lives?
Yes, this is another strange cross of our lives. Your dad was almost James Bond. My dad was almost Davy Crockett.
No way.
Very similar.
My dad, we moved here to Atlanta from Chicago. We moved to Atlanta. I'm like, 12 years old, 13 years old. And my dad gets us all in the car one Saturday. And he says, we're going down to the Westin, which is a famous hotel here where you go up to the top in the spinning restaurant. Every city has one.
Right.
So he says, we're going to the Westin and, it's going to be a day, bring a snack, whatever. We get down there and all of a sudden we're standing in line with a bunch of other grown men just standing there in this near this conference hall. And I'm like, Dad, I thought we were going to go to the top in the spinning restaurant and the whole 9 yards. He said, like a good Irish father, shut up and eat your snack, right? We're going to get there eventually. We're standing in line. That's what people do. Because back then we did not have.
Did you just press a sound effect? I didn't know you had the Ableton right there in front of you.
Oh, buddy, we got the whole 9 yards. That was accident.
That was an accident.
A little quick.
It was a good placement.
Before the punchline.
Yeah, that was a little before the punchline. I guess I'm not getting the producer job either. So the afternoon just goes on and on. We don't have cell phones, video games, none of that shit. The afternoon goes on. And then eventually my dad leaves us with this lady so he can go into the conference room. He's back 5 minutes later. So what in the world did we just do? We didn't even go to the top of the building. What happened? He says, well, I'm auditioning for Disney's new version of Davy Crockett.
Wow.
My dad wasn't an actor. He wasn't good looking. He was just a guy. And he's like, what the hell? Why not?
Why not?
He responded to like a general call out, like a cattle call.
Des, I don't even know how my dad is so far from an actor or a model or anything. I don't know. It was just this random occurrence in my life. I was just kind of piggybacking off of that story about 007. But
well, my dad, he had one line in Zulu, right?
Oh, Zulu.
Zulu. It's Michael Caine,
Yes.
And then he had a few lines in Day of the Triffids, which most people don't know, but it's actually like a cult B movie. However, the claim to fame of Day of the Triffids is in Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, the opening scene where he walks in London, Cillian Murphy walks in London and there's nobody there at the beginning of this zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's actually a homage to Day of the Triffids. So it is. It is a film that did inspire some. But my father played a blind pilot in Day of the Triffids, and he was in a Blue Nun commercial, which actually aired in the United States.
What's Blue Nun?
Blue Nun is like a cheap wine.
Oh.
And he's having a picnic, and he says to his, the woman in the commercial, he says, "Red or white, darling?" And she says, "Blue." So there you go. So,
did your dad, and I know your dad has passed, did your dad, when he was alive, did he support what you were doing? Did you feel like you got support from your dad?
Yeah. Both my parents were actually very supportive of that. My mother only cared that I got a degree. That was like her thing. And my dad always straight away. I mean, he had a career in entertainment.
Yeah.
Actually, so what my dad James Bond was all about was the sacrifice that he made. Because in my lifetime, my father was in retail. He was most of my life. He was the general manager of Burberry on 57th Street.
Ooh.
So he was just a retail guy. But that was because he decided that the acting, modeling life wouldn't be a stable life for his kids. So my dad was near James Bond. It is a funny show, but it's really about the sacrifice that my father made for us.
That's it.
So, and he was very supportive. And actually, the hook of My Dad Was Near James Bond at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 2010 was at the end. Actually, my dad used to come out. So even though he was
nice.
He was dying, but we flew him over to Edinburgh, and right at the end he would walk out, and it would bring the house down. So that that was a great experience that we had at the end. So not only was he supportive, but he took part. His final act, literally, no pun intended, his final act was we did a show together.
I love that.
This is where our paths diverge, my friend. Dad is still wondering when I'm going to get a real job.
Yes.
Even when I had a real job, he was wondering when I was going to get a real job.
Yeah. But my dad was an immigrant. My dad wasn't from the States. He was raised in Cork and actually lived a lot of his life in the UK.
Yeah, when he came to the United States, did he find it tough? Because I had relatives that were from Ireland, and they found it tough to come over to the United States. Things were different way back then, right?
Well, he had been in London for years, so he was quite a cosmopolitan dude by the time he
sounds like a Renaissance man. He sounds like a real badass, actually.
Well, here's what's funny is my parents always lied to me about how they met. I didn't find out until very late in the end.
Tell us.
That they actually met at an AA meeting.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. By the way, they didn't remain in AA. In my lifetime, they were sober, but after they met, they went back drinking. But they originally met at an AA meeting, which, of course, is frowned upon in their recovery circles.
Of
That's
course,
right.
you cannot date. You cannot date at least for the first couple of years. I understand that you cannot date. It's like way frowned upon to date other people who are trying to get sober.
Process,
because you enable each other.
You're not supposed to. They always said they met at a party, which was a total lie. But so they met at an AA meeting. But then they lived in my father was my father never had a driver's license. This is how urban my dad was.
A lot
never
of people
had a
in New
driver's
York
license.
don't have it. Yeah.
Until he died. He went from London to New York, and he never drove.
He didn't
He
need it.
never drove. That's so interesting. How
But the good
crazy
news
is
was
that?
he married my mother, who was an absolute control freak, neurotically so. So she was quite happy that he didn't even have the ability to drive himself around.
Yeah.
She could keep
eyes on him. Yeah, that's
100%.
right. So your parents at one point weren't sober. They got sober.
In my lifetime, I never
and then sober again. Yeah,
but I never saw them drinking. They were sober before I was born.
Except for the Blue Nun.
except for the blue
Yes,
nun.
No.
Yeah.
yes. Oh, and the blood of Christ, obviously.
Oh, yes,
Right.
blood of Christ. Well, that's
Obviously.
the two bits of alcohol that were allowed.
that's right. Alcoholics all over say it's for the Lord.
By the way, you
for
were
the
joking,
Lord.
but I don't know if it was before we started recording, but you were talking about being an Irish Catholic from Chicago. I have a lot of Catholic material, but I don't really normally do it in the States. But I was in Chicago recently, and I did it, and my God,
It killed.
very Catholic Chicago.
Very
yeah.
Catholic.
I was surprised.
So I grew up Irish Catholic. I went to Catholic school all of my life, and it's just like so deeply embedded into my
Poor
experience. I know.
Oh, trust me, it's more suffering than people realize.
Yeah, a lot of suffering, a lot
What
of
I've
guilt.
learned.
A
Yeah.
lot of shame.
Hundreds
Abuse.
of hours in therapy to
Yeah.
pull back the Catholic veil that is the original sin. Like you're born just a bad person, and you
Literally,
got to figure
feeling
it all
bad.
out. That's how it goes. But it was such a part of my existence especially as a young child. When we came here to Atlanta, where it is definitely not as Catholic.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we stopped going to church as much. My dad didn't care if we read the Bible. I think the veil kind of got pulled back a little bit.
How annoying that you got to Atlanta, where church is actually fun.
Yes, that's right. And I had to go to Catholic church.
Went from like boring, like He is Lord, really boring songs to like black church.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go to a Southern Baptist. She got married at a Southern Baptist.
No, it was a black Catholic. It was the first black Catholic church.
Black Catholic church.
I'm not
Really?
Catholic, but my husband is, and so and they have so much fun at this church.
Des,
Yes.
I am
I
telling
mean,
you what.
full band, sing, full choir.
Big fan.
Oh yeah, huge.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
I was like, are we doing rails in the bathroom or what's going on? When does the party start here? I mean, people were just
Whereas
dancing down the aisle.
my mother was such an Irish American Catholic and so traditional that sometimes the priest would sing the Our Father, and she would like say out loud, like people could hear her. She'd be like, "You don't sing the Our Father." Like, anything fun at mass was a
Right.
problem. Oh, and do you know what else my mother hated? If like every now and then, like something would happen, like the priest would give a homily, or like I don't know, at a wedding or a funeral, somebody would say something, and people would applaud. My mother was like, "You don't applaud at mass." There was no joy.
Yet
There was
the-
no joy
the
allowed
priest-
at church.
I know there's people up in that church. I'm
Yeah,
up there
they're
going.
just like
Yeah.
dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't applaud. No, not according to my mother.
No. You want to know something? So when we get to Atlanta, we go to church first couple of months, and there's like this young priest, but he's very traditional, right? He's the kind of guy, like, he gives the homily. It's right on the nose. It's all about Jesus Christ suffering for your sins. You got to do this. He's not one of these like young reformist priests. He's very much traditionally. So he's standing outside the church as everyone walks out, is greeting. And so my mom has us. My dad's not there for whatever reason. And we are wearing deck shoes. I don't know if you know what deck shoes are. They're just, deck shoes, right? So he's Irish. Yeah, he's Hamptons. He's got deck shoes on right now.
I got the references from both sides of the Atlantic. We have shoes in Ireland.
You do? Because I went to Ireland, got stuck in a snowstorm in Dublin, and all I saw was Dating Naked for 5 days on RTE.
Naked and Afraid?
Dating Naked. That
show.
Right.
I missed that one.
They reveal vaginas 1 minute, one
that
inch
show.
at a time.
Yes, I forgot what that was hilarious.
So we're walking outside, and the priest stops my mom, and she says, I know you're new to the community, and I just wanted to welcome you and just let you know that Jesus frowns upon casual shoes. I noticed your children have all of them on. Let's change that for next week.
Yeah, literally, Jesus wore sandals.
I know.
Jesus, I couldn't understand. I wanted to say something, but of course I would get smacked, so I didn't say something. But it was just like, even at my young age, I was like, what an asshole. What an asshole.
If Jesus was alive today, he'd be wearing Birkenstocks. I don't know what these people are talking about.
Yeah. Jesus was a mushroom-taking hippie. That's what he was. I mean, it's almost conclusive, but let's not get everybody in the audience all pissed off.
Everyone will get all riled up on the religious front. Anyway, I was very Catholic in my younger years.
Yeah, me too. I was an altar boy in the whole 9 years.
The whole thing.
But somewhere around 13 years old, I don't know, 13, 14, I started making out with girls while I was supposed to be an altar boy. Like they had me back in the past, the little cloakroom or whatever.
Yeah. The rectory?
The rectory. The rectory? Yes, that's right. So I have to. I'm dying to know this because I saw it in your special when it came out, which is available, by the way, on YouTube and absolutely brilliantly hilarious. The first 10 minutes knock me on my ass every time I watch it.
Great.
Aggressively moderate. It's a great time to be a.
Well, it's funny. I nearly called the special aggressively moderate.
You should have. That would have been brilliant.
Yeah, but then actually Hannah was thinking like, you don't want to. You
don't want to turn anybody off.
We called it Of All People. And the reason why it's called Of All People is because Hannah got invited to the MTV Music Awards and I accompanied her. And then we ended up in like the Irish tabloids with a picture of us together. And in one of the Irish like website, gossip websites, the opening line of the article was, Des Bishop of all people showed up at the MTV Music Awards. So I was like, I love that. She got Irish passive aggressive. And that's the type of passive aggressive that I like. I actually found that entertaining.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
But then I was like, of all people, that is a great title. So actually, the title is kind of out of spite. It's a spiteful title.
I love that.
When you and Hannah got together, like, just the Irish tabloids, they keep tabs on you?
Apparently,
a little bit.
In Ireland, I'm pretty. In Ireland, I'm pretty well known. But you were actually. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were about to praise my special. I should. I don't like interrupting praise.
You interrupted my compliment. Now I can't even remember. I'm 47. What do you want me to do?
You said you enjoyed the first 10 minutes.
I enjoyed the first 10 minutes knocked me on my ass. You're so quick. You're so witty and fussy and fiery, and I love it. I think it's my type of comedy. It's right up my alley.
Well, can I wrap myself out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go.
In the edit, that is not actually the beginning of how I performed it.
Oh.
So I made a decision to come out hot, but that's not how the show actually started. So
you made the right call.
Yeah,
you
the
made
first
the right
bit,
call.
the straight white guy stuff, it was like actually 15 minutes into the show.
I see.
So that's a secret.
Editing magic.
Yeah, editing magic. I see comedy sometimes. I don't know. I think it's got a lot of musicality to it. And you made the right call because you came out hot and you hit the beats. And it's just gets you going from the get. But I wanted to share that in that special, you say that Hannah wants kids, but you're like, I'm not so sure about that. And how are you feeling now? A year and some change after the special was recorded. I'm assuming it was recorded in 2023. A year and some change after that. How are you feeling now? Where does that debate stand inside of your inside your household? Because I'd like to offer a little advice, if I might.
Well, first of all, it's not a debate because it's not really up to me. I mean, obviously, it's up to me in terms of making a deposit, but in terms of whether we have kids or not, it's basically like up to Hannah.
Sure.
Now, here's the truth. I always knew that we're probably going to have kids, you know, but my personal thing is that I was always big into having kids. The only reason I'm like not as into it now is because I just got a bit older. A lot of my friends, their kids are like, they're close to being kind of done.
Right.
And I just, the thought of just beginning, because I've seen, Hannah hasn't seen what I've seen. I've seen how tough it is,
True.
you know? So I'm just like, I was at a time where I had accepted that I might not have kids and I was fine with it. But I've never been like, anti-kid. You know?
Yeah, you're not like, I don't want to have kids. You're like,
No.
Wait, I'm getting to a point in my life where I might be slowing down, feeling the aches and pains a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can go through 18 years.
That's when Bryan decided to have 30
That's
children.
when I decided to have 30 children. So I want you to know.
And I'm on your team.
Because
That
basically, I'm not
I haven't had
anti-kid.
any of-
I just
Yeah.
anti-back pain.
I haven't had any of my own, and now I have all
you have
these
mine.
30
Yes.
that I watched Bryan make.
What's your advice?
My advice is do it. Being an older father, my advice is do it. First of all, get some Advil and do it. Advil, Vicodin, whatever your doctor happens to prescribe.
I need
you.
Advil. I need Advil to get to the regular stuff.
Yeah.
I
know, me
Yeah.
too.
Child.
Yes.
We just talked about that.
I'll share with you something about having, in Europe, I feel like this is far more common than it is here in the United States. You'll see silver-haired dads all around,
Yes.
with young kids running around. It's pretty common to have
In New
children.
York, too,
Yeah,
by the
well,
way.
that's true. Here in Atlanta, you have them at 16, 17. By the time you're 30, you're done with them.
Yeah, but anybody I knew from back in the day, like, because I'm in recovery myself for a long time. Like a lot of the guys from like tougher backgrounds than me, they all come into the rooms like, oh, I'm trying to get my head together. I had a kid, and they were like 18, 19 years old. I was like, what are you, stupid? But now I think they were smart. I'm
Right.
the idiot.
Yes.
I am the idiot.
But I'm going to share with you that because I no longer drink or do drugs because I had children. I can never
Right.
be hungover and wake up with children. Not at my advanced age. I'm lucky that I can get out of bed without breaking a hip. Here's the thing. When you have children at an older age, you have the advantage of hindsight. You've seen so much stuff in
Yes.
your life that you are wiser, you are calmer, you are able to know which hills to die on and which hills not to die on. You're not
Yes.
as fiery and fussy as you were when you were a kid. And I'm telling you, as an older father, I think I enjoy the moments so much more than my friends who had children at 20 years old or 19 years old or 22 years old. They would
'Cause
go
they're
out.
still growing up.
They're still growing up. They're
Yeah.
going out and partying and they're missing this thing and they're not doing that thing. And it's not that the children ended up fine. Some of them are in custody, I'm sure.
Well, that's
somewhere.
why I joke with Hannah. I'm like, it's a 50% chance it's going to be a horrible kid. You want to roll the dice? Yeah. I have a friend that has 3 boys, same as my parents had 3 boys.
Yeah.
He had 3 boys. 2 of them are a disaster. That's a
Yeah.
bad.
Yes.
That's a bad hit rate, man.
That is a terrible hit rate. But how old was he when he had the kids?
No, he was normal actually. Yeah, he was
30 or
he was
something.
Old school,
Yeah.
like had him when he was in his 20s.
Yeah, listen, I'm telling you, I don't think you'll regret it. You'll feel the aches and pains. You'll feel a little bit, foggy sometimes from not sleeping. Once you get past the first year, you're going to be fine. You're going to love it. It's going to be incredible. I promise you guys. Don't. Hannah wants one. Go for it.
I have no doubt it's going to be fine. And obviously, a lot of time you're just joking about it.
Of course, I know you are.
This is a new joke. This is not in any special. I'll share it with you now.
Yes.
My current joke about the not wanting to have kids is people say, oh, you got to have kids. You don't want to die alone, which people said to me a lot before I met Hannah. You don't want to die alone. And my message there is you're actually only dying for a very short period of time. It's not like it's a very small percentage of your life. So, a kid in this economy, 30-year commitment for what? A couple of morphine-induced conversations? I'll talk to a nurse. You're off your face. You're off your face. Give me fentanyl and a nurse. I'm good. I'll be fine.
I
My mother actually had fentanyl at the end, by the way.
Yeah.
I wasn't being dismissive about the seriousness of the fentanyl epidemic. I was actually my mother had a fentanyl patch in her last couple of weeks.
It does provide
Krissy and I have this new theory that we have. So a couple of weeks ago we found this Instagram reel. And the Instagram reel is a bunch of old ladies, and I would imagine they're from somewhere in Eastern Europe. They've got the, kind of like the gypsy garb on, and there's this music playing in the background. Travelers. Excuse me, travelers. I guess someone got upset that I said the word gypsy. Travelers.
Oh,
Let's
right.
call them that. Yeah. Okay. So everyone's sitting around a table, old ladies, none of them younger than 80 years old. Passing around the biggest plate of cocaine I have ever seen in my entire life, and they are snorting it. I'll send it to you. I swear to God. Then there's a part 2 to this video also, which shows them up and dancing like wild people.
Wow.
We're like, why not?
We're reading all about
When
these
you're
people
older.
down in Florida in the villages. They got STDs going through the roof. They're making busts on ecstasy and heroin and all this stuff. I think you do drugs when you're really young, and then when you're really old. And in the middle, you have kids and you straighten your life out a little bit. But toward the end, who fucking cares? Do it. Get it.
Yeah, because they said that since Viagra came out, that like STDs have really risen within the nursing home and retirement environment.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out that I think European gypsies, Romani gypsies, the Romani, I don't think they get offended when you call them gypsies. The travelers is the Irish nomadic people. Don't like being called gypsies. So I think the travel thing is for the Irish travelers. I think Romani gypsies don't mind being called gypsies. I think, but don't quote me on that.
Well, I told someone put it sent it in a comment or an email or text message, and I thought to myself, everyone's so fucking sensitive. Like, there's a television show in America called My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. I mean, if TLC
they are Irish travelers. Those ones.
Oh, they are?
The My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding, that is actually a show about Irish travelers living in the UK. And there's a big population of them in the UK.
Wow.
And and are they as ostentatious as they're made out?
I mean, the show is very exaggerated. Anyway, so just in case you get jammed up again.
For clearing that up. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so listen, to put a pin on it, have kids. You can call me anytime you need to. We'll talk it through. We'll start a support group for dads in their 40s.
Yes, there's plenty of them. The problem is that I'm going to be a dad in my 50s, just so you know.
Oh,
I'm 48.
That's true. Yeah, you got to get on it. If you're going to have kids in your 40s, you got to get on it right away.
I know, and Hannah's too busy right now, so we're not going to be doing it in the next year.
Well, both of y'all are busy. You're touring now. So
well, listen, I mean, come on, I'm going to be an older dad. I got to make enough money to get some help.
You got to.
And
the nanny.
That's true.
You're minimum one nanny.
Minimum.
One nanny. But if your wife is anything like my wife, that nanny is going to be at least 60 years old. There's going to be no woman coming in this house less than 60.
I'm not going to share it, but I have a friend, sadly, lost his wife young, but anyway, the in-laws got the nanny, and they made a bad call.
Oh, they did.
Well, I mean, good call, a bad call. Depends what side of the divide you're on.
Good call on the nanny's part.
But as a result of that story, you can be sure our nanny is definitely going to be 60 years old.
That's what my wife said. We were looking for a nanny one time, and just things are like one of those days, out of control. Everyone can't everywhere. I'm trying to record, and my wife finally, okay, let's look at someone who can help us with the kids. And we start going through whatever website it was. We start going through that, and within 5 minutes, my wife was like, "Nope, we don't need a nanny." And I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Well, that's because you're not supposed to look on Seeking Arrangements for a nanny.
That's true. SugarDaddy.com.
Field.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I actually want to get a Mandarin speaking nanny.
Oh, there you go.
I was thinking about introducing our child to Mandarin from the get-go.
You should.
Definitely.
That's when. So my wife is Venezuelan, and so we have a bilingual household. And as children, they absorbed that. They took them a little bit longer to speak, I guess, clearly in both languages.
Yes.
But once they did, they now speak to their mom in only Spanish. They speak to me in only English. And it is brilliant, beautiful. And they are young kids. They're under the age of 7, all of them. And so it's like, but they absorb that shit like a sponge. Now, I've been trying to learn Spanish for 15 fucking years. And the only time I know Spanish, and you're right about this, is when I'm in Spain. That's the only time that I really know Spanish because I'm forced to know Spanish, right? I have to get around.
you have to learn it because as your kids get older, they're going to be like talking about you, talking shit about you.
They already
Totally.
do. Yeah, they already do. They do that in English and in Spanish.
With
in
Astrid.
English and in Spanish.
Hannah and I live in the Lower East Side, right on the border at Chinatown, and actually, I would have the opportunity to send my child to a public school, still a public school, but actually a Mandarin-speaking public school.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's my sneaky goal. If it
Yeah,
happens,
I like
I started this conversation saying I'm not going to have kids. I've literally already picked out
already
their
got
grammar
You've
plans
already
for
been
the
thinking
kids.
about it. Yeah, you've been thinking about it.
He just doesn't want the Irish tabloids.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't worry, I can promise you no one listens to this to the show. You'll be just fine. So where you're starting a tour now? I just saw was on your Instagram yesterday. I saw that you just announced some more dates. How many
Yeah, I mean,
dates?
honestly, that's all because the special, but particularly the clips from the special.
They've done so well.
Did fine on YouTube, but the clips did insanely well to the point where like it really did change my American
Trajectory.
career. I mean, my
Yeah.
Irish career was, I've been doing it in Ireland for a long time, but in America, I mean, I was virtually unknown. And I'm not saying I'm like, gangbusters, but like I'm literally selling tickets for the first time.
Yeah,
so that's
congratulations.
Like a new phenomenon. So all these dates are literally as a result of the clips doing well, and it has been fun. I have to say, like it, 'cause
Fantastic.
I've been doing comedy a long time. It's a long time since I felt like a new sort of fresh departure in my career. So this has been quite exciting.
I've kind of bumped into you back, when the pandemic started, and then I watched the China special. Then I got on your Instagram, and so I've been watching all the stuff that you've been putting out. And those clips, those 4 or 5 that you're talking about, they blew the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
So much so that our intrepid researchers found a whole subreddit about Des Bishop, right?
Oh, right.
And so the subreddit is post after post. This guy must be hot right now because he keeps popping up on my Instagram.
Oh, yes.
I found this guy on Instagram. This guy's my favorite. There are so many people out there that are like fawning over your comedy. And I think that's wonderful. Like, I think that's fucking fantastic. And just like we were talking about with Hannah, this is such a direct way to reach your audience, people who will like you. If the algorithm somehow manages to favor you in any way, shape, or form, you can find a whole new audience of people who are really your fans. And so I love this story that you've been doing this for a while. It's like one guy said on the Reddit, what did he say? He said something about, wow, this guy really, found his 15 minutes or found his star or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought, it only took him 20 years to get there. I mean, it's only 20 years.
Well, it's funny because the Irish people, what happened was a lot of these people were like, he's ripping off Bill Burr, right? So there'd be people in the comments be like,
Yeah,
he's
a lot
ripping
of
off
that,
Big Bill. And then the Irish people would be in the comments, what are you talking about ripping off Bill Burr? He's been doing it long. Maybe Bill Burr is ripping off Des Bishop. Because so there was this clash of people who'd like never heard of me before. And then all the Irish being like, no, what are you talking about? Like, we know this guy forever. But honestly, in terms of like Reddit and stuff like that, like I don't, because a long time in Ireland, I avoid all that, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny that you're seeing all these positive comments. That's the sweet spot. Before I'm actually well known here, people are like, we like this guy. The minute you get well known, like, this guy loves himself, man.
Fuck this guy. And you're right about this. Along with the sweet and positive comments, of course, there's 6 assholes for
we
every
love
nice
that.
guy,
We
right?
love that.
It's awesome. And you shouldn't be reading your own Reddit posts, just like we don't.
My favorite, all for years, and this is not just for me, this goes for so many comics, will eventually get this comment, which is, this guy is not as funny as he thinks he is. Which I love, because I always think, how funny do they think I think I am?
Yeah.
Because I promise you, I'm more critical of me than you are of me. I promise you.
You had the same reaction. We get this comment once every 2 months. Someone on the reviews or in the comment section will be like, wow, they sure do think they're funny.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite comments. And I got on air and I'm like, well, I mean, do they really think we think we're funny?
I know.
We obviously realize how mediocre we are at this. And,
But on a positive note, it is exciting for me. And like I had a strange career where, like, honestly, if I started doing my jokes to you right now from like 1999 to 2010, you wouldn't even know what I was talking about largely because they were so Irish focused, and the Irish, of course, were eating it up, but it was very parochial, very specific to them.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite exciting for me to have like a broader,
Yeah.
a broader audience, and actually going to China actually helped me to realize that like I needed to broaden my horizons of subject matter, and this is nothing negative about my experience, and I love all that, and I love all that material too.
Of course,
but obviously this is exciting for me to have branched out to something broader.
Well, yeah,
change is
and I mean, America is your home, right? I mean, right now it's your home, and America has a huge population. It's extraordinarily diverse. It's a big country.
Loves comedy.
You can eat lunch just touring around, maybe for the rest of your life, right? That's a great thing to do. Where Ireland is wonderful, and it's one of your home bases, but it's smaller, and so I can understand why it's exciting to then broaden your audience to the biggest entertainment, I guess, audience in the world, which is the United States of America.
Also, creatively for me, because I have a weird identity. Because when I went to Ireland at 14, I went on my own. Right, I went to boarding school on my own. My family was still in New York.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I've always been like a hybrid. Like I've always had my feet in both camps. But I was never able to like explore aspects of my American childhood in the ways that I am now. It's like it's very fun for me. In fact, I just did a show 2 nights ago in a suburb of New York, and a bunch of guys I grew up with, like I didn't even know they were coming. They were in the second row, but they were at the show. And then it was like, I was even able to indulge even further in that American childhood. And there's actually a lot of stuff I could never talk about in Ireland because they wouldn't have gotten it.
They won't understand.
Yeah, for sure.
So that, and also the other thing that I've been enjoying exploring is like, I'm a New Yorker, like a real New Yorker.
Yeah.
And it's a quite specific part of my identity, which means nothing really to Irish people other than the New York accent. Is like, oh, Goodfellas, man. Joey from Friends, how are you doing?
How are you doing?
It's been fun to be able to sort of lean into that a little
Sure.
bit. Again, just from a creative point of view, you find jokes that perhaps I wouldn't have found if I wasn't able to lean into that.
Can I dig in a little bit on moving over to Ireland when you're 14 by yourself? Is that that's a mutual decision, right? You and your parents talk about it. Hey, this would be good for you. You can go find out where you're from. Or is this, how did you get, seems so weird to me that they would.
The joke in my show is that I got kicked out of school. That's 100% true. I say the reason I got kicked out of school is because I had a problem with alcohol. So my mother had this ingenious idea to send me to Ireland to go to boarding school. Now, there are 2 half-truths in that statement because obviously the truth can really get in the way of jokes. Did you just put balloons on?
No, you did.
I don't even know how that happened.
I know. We don't either. It happens to us on occasion. But notice how we knew it right away. We didn't even miss a beat. We were like, whatever.
So anyway, so the 2 half-truths are, one, I did have a problem with alcohol. I started drinking at 12, and already by 14, my mother was pretty sure that it wasn't going to work out for me with the booze.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really 100% the reason I got kicked out of school. And the second half-truth is my mother didn't send me. I did. A cousin of mine put the idea in my head about going to boarding school in Ireland because she was helping me like with my summer school homework. She was older than me. She was visiting from Ireland. And I put the idea into my parents' head. And then when they looked into it, it turned out to be like way simpler than they expected. Not that expensive.
Yeah.
And my mother, later on in years, because she gets a hard time. Well, she's dead now, but my mother got a hard time for like
shipping your kid off.
Yeah, like why? But in her mind, because she really thought that I was going to have a problem with drugs and alcohol. She was correct. So she actually thought that I'd probably be safer over there.
Yeah.
I had some other family members in New York that were like really struggling. And, amidst her Irish American Catholic anxiety, raised by alcoholics herself, by the way, she's a child of alcoholics. In that anxiety of just like her whole life has been fear of alcohol and alcoholism, she kind of thought he'll be safer over there. And, I think largely she was right.
She did it out of love.
And education-wise, it was a lifesaver for me because boarding school just suited me. I mean, I don't think I would ever send my kids to boarding school, but boarding school absolutely saved me. The structure, the forced study, the camaraderie amongst the boys, all boys school, by the way. That was a big. I needed less less distraction.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything about the decision was in my favor, but obviously there is a bit of oddness.
Yes.
About suddenly being in another country on your own, staying with cousins that you've never met before.
It seems like a great adventure, but I think back to 14-year-old Bryan and how scary that would have been to another country, even if you're loosely connected to it, or in your case, intensely connected to it.
Yeah.
You've never been there.
Never been.
Yeah. And then to go over there. But I can see why your mom did this. She did it out of love. She was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that my child doesn't go down the path that I went down, that their dad went down, and that our family members have gone down. And this is going to be the hardest thing I ever did. Because if your mom was like my mom, she loved you to death. Irish Catholic moms just love their children to death. That's why they have 40 of them per family.
Yeah, well, I think actually the main reason she did it because she suffered so bad from anxiety, but nobody actually talked about anxiety back then. So I actually think if my mother took a Xanax, I never would have went to Ireland. She was freaking out. She was like freaking out way too much. But I'm glad. I mean, I can't imagine.
Okay.
I can't imagine my life without it. Honestly,
Right.
So,
I don't think you'd be the same person today.
and I was very lucky too in terms of like Ireland. Ireland changed a lot. Like when I arrived, it was the tail end of like what I would consider like an old Ireland, kind of Catholic, very rigid, conservative kind of life. And Ireland, like, it just changed like 100% since I got there. And I was able to experience it, witness it, observe it, and then talk about it on stage. So there's just so many aspects of like the life that I had in Ireland that was like really lucky.
Yeah. Well, and it made you, and then it gave you a home base to then go field your comedy. Like you had purchase over your own story and the relation that you had to the Irish people, and you were able to kind of get in their heads and their lives because you were one of them. So then they relate to it. I've seen,
but they don't accept
comedy.
us. They don't. They don't accept Irish Americans as Irish. By the way,
Yeah. Well,
just so you know, they
can't have everything.
When you tell them that you're Irish, they're like, "You're not Irish. You're American."
I would never say that. Like I went to Dublin. And when I went to Dublin, I've always wanted to go to Ireland. So my wife and I, we fly. She's pregnant. We're going to do one of these, what do they call those? Baby moons? A baby moon where we go. So we fly all over Europe, and then our last stop is Dublin. This is in February, I think January or February.
I thought you were going to try to have the baby in the EU.
Right, exactly.
Now we're trying to get the kids Spanish passports, and I was like, shit, we just should have had the kids in Spain. So when the night before we fly over there, it looks like it's going to have some snow in Dublin. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty normal. There's snow in Dublin. Of course there's snow in Dublin.
Yeah, but there's really not.
There's never snow in Dublin. And so it snowed like 2.5, 3 feet. It just, we were the last plane that landed. The cab slid all the way to the hotel. When we got to the hotel, people were sleeping in the lobby because they could not go anywhere else. And people were getting there was turnover in the hotel. And so the hotel was struggling to feed people. It was really weird. We were stuck in Dublin in a snowstorm.
But a half an inch of snow will do that in Ireland.
half an inch will do that in Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But the people were so, we could get downtown and walk around the bars and stuff like that. And the people were so lovely. It's such a cosmopolitan city. The people are lovely.
Great.
We have friends that live there. What's your favorite city in Ireland?
Well, I mean, Cork is my spiritual home. It's where I started my comedy career, and I consider myself like an honorary Cork man. I'm going to say Cork. My dad was from Middleton, and then I went to college in Cork. My grandmother's from West Cork, so I'm going to say Cork. But Dublin is a great international city. I mean, there's just no doubt. Like when people visit me in Dublin, like they're just blown away by how cool it is and how great the food is. Like Hannah's parents, we were just there. Hannah's parents were in Ireland for the first time, literally a week and a half ago, and they were blown away by how great the food was.
We had to eat the hotel room service or the food in the restaurant downstairs for 5 straight days because, we could walk to bars. There were bars serving food, but they couldn't get the food, so no one else had food. So it was like the hotel stuff or whatever. And I don't know who was cooking the food, but I expected the food to be shite, and it was really fucking good. I got to be honest.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we sat around a hotel room for 5 days watching Dating Naked. And,
that's that sounds like a nice trip.
Honestly, it was the best end to our baby moon.
The best thing about Ireland is the people. Like the people are the great resource of Ireland, and so you can't beat it.
They are lovely, and now we can say we know one for sure.
That's
Des
right.
Bishop. You can go to desbishop.net. Don't ask. We're not going to get into the .com. Desbishop.net for his tour schedule and all his dates. You must go watch his YouTube special. Please, of all people.
Yes.
Des, of all people.
It needs more views. You know what? You don't even have to watch it. Just click it on and
Just
then go on. Just let it play.
Yeah,
let it play in the background.
There's some smart, enterprising young man.
My ego is completely reliant on views these days. This is what the algorithm has done to us as human beings.
Yeah.
Quantum computing.
Quantum computing.
But I have to say the feedback on the special was way more positive than I was expecting.
It's really good.
I do think people will enjoy it. I'm more confident in saying that now than before I put it out, because I almost didn't put it out. Only Hannah was like, you have to put this out. I doubted it 100%. I wasn't going to put it up. That's how critical I was of it before it went up. So
Des,
nice. We're glad you put it up.
Yeah, we're all our worst critic, but from an outsider's point of view, someone that didn't know you until 48 minutes ago, it's a really good special. Des is really funny. Check out all his shit. Check out Breaking China. Honestly, one of my favorite shows from the pandemic. One of the gems in the sea of entertainment that was headed our way during
the never-ending sea of entertainment.
That's right. All right, you go tell Hannah you're ready to have a baby.
Tell her hi.
Tell her to get away from those dangerous tennis ball machines. You're ready to have a baby, and you guys get to work. Des, will you come back and see us?
Anytime somebody drops out, all I need is about 10 minutes notice. I'll crank up Zoom.
Oh, we're taking you up on that.
Yeah,
I got you on tape. We're taking you up on that. DesBishop.net. Of all people on YouTube, please go check it out. And then, of course, you can find him on Instagram and check out all the reels that we have been talking about. Des Bishop, a gentleman and a scholar, not necessarily in that order, but we love you nonetheless.
Thank you, Des.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Great to meet you guys.
You too.